Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Usually Fixing and Tinkering, and as you can guess by the title of the thumbnail, Rover 600. We finally drive Martin's Rover 600 and I experienced a 600 for the first time. I've never driven one, despite the fact that I almost bought one as my first car, was going to buy one and then ended up buying a Focus Mark 1. Things could have been very different there, but I've actually never physically driven a 600. And instead of doing a generic review and the history of the car, you guys, if you're watching this video, you probably know this already, so I'm not going to go into the history of the car, etc. I want to review what's in front of me, look at some of the details of what the car is today and what it's like to live with a 600 in 2024, because these cars are now 30 odd years old. The youngest are about 25 years old now, and they're not spring chickens no more. They have their foibles. They have a small following, a loyal following of many people that really enjoy these cars. But today, it's a bit of a niche, and there's not much information out there as to what are you getting yourself into. If you're thinking of looking to buy a 600 or attempted to get yourself into this world, what's it like? Let's have a look. The video starts with my own car, the 45. So the 45, the reason I've banged on about how good this car actually is, this is only the result of a lot of development over the years between Rover and Honda, and a lot of which can be found in a 600. This is kind of where it started. The styling, Richard Woolley styled this car, mainly oversaw the overall design of this car, and he oversaw the design of this car in the styling department as well. And there's so many similarities between a 45 and a 600, especially the early 400 HHRs and the early 45 Mark 1. Less of the Mark 2 with a facelift, but all the elements are all here. Suspension department benefited from a lot of development of this suspension, which is a little bit different, but still independent, and a few other bits and pieces that you might discover if you're familiar to a 45 that you would see in a 600. But it's very much that this car was at the start of Rover Honda's departure as a collaboration. The R8 was a perfect collaboration. The 600 came about when things were starting to dissipate a little bit. British Aerospace had sold to BMW. There was a lot of things going on and the partnership was ending. And Rover needed to desperately replace the Montego, so they replaced it with the 600 in that bracket. But this wasn't one of them R8 partnerships where it was 50-50. It wasn't even 75-25, to be honest with you. It was more almost entirely Honda Accord, which is what this is, but with Rover's own styling over the top, interior trim and a few bits and pieces. But that's it. Mechanically, it's a Honda Accord. Rover did not mess with the suspension on this car whatsoever. It was only on a few odd models that they messed about and started tinkering, but predominantly the aim of the game was to produce a mid-class segment car for absolutely next to nothing in terms of development costs. So Honda did all the developing because it was already a product in its own right, and this is what you see before you today. Rover put their own styling over the top and it was brilliant. It won design awards and everything. And I remember seeing some of the old Top Gear reviews of this back in the day. I thought this was the most beautiful looking Rover product of the time in terms of styling. Rover R8s are brilliant cars technically, but I think 600s look a lot better. 800s are beautiful in their own way as well, but the 600 was a little bit more modern than the pair of them. It definitely brought the styling game a little bit further, and this is just a beautiful result of this. This particular car, for those who don't know, this is a Rover 623 SLI. So the 600 is effectively, you have the I, the SI, the SLI and the GSI. The GSI being the top of the range. This car does have a leather interior from a GSI. It was bought by Martin for the absolutely nothing sum of £120, and that was an absolute steal about 10-15 years ago, when parts were cheap for this, and parts are still cheap for this. He's just bought a set of these alloy wheels, these lovely alloy wheels, for next to nothing. I think 30-40 pounds for a set of 4. £10 a corner. Nobody wants these things. Nobody wants the parts. Parts are still cheap, and these are still cheap cars to buy. And for the amount of car you get, for the price is some about of £1,000, maybe £2,000 if you're lucky. But I've seen some beautiful 600s sold at around £2,000 recently, and they haven't sold. This is a bit of an issue in the Rover world, particularly 600s. They are a niche car. Some of them are modified, although these cars are not akin to really being modified that much. But there is a bit of a sort of modifying culture, especially when it comes to Japanese aftermarket modified parts. There is a little bit of a niche on that one. The boot is extremely spacious on this. The rear suspension is it's a more complex version of what was on the R8 45 independent Honda setup. This has a completely separate subframe, a much thicker anti-roll bar, but it does look antiquated. It looks like it's definitely a bit more antiquated. I think it might have started out in the 1980s at other Hondas, and it made its way to the Honda Accord in this version. It is a bit more of a less sophisticated suspension, and I'm going to find out that, but I have been warned that it's nowhere near as sophisticated as the independent rear Honda setup that you get in an R8, 45 Honda Civic, etc. So that's what gives the car quite good handling, but it's not quite as good as what followed. But it's developmental. It was a massive step forward, and I think this was Honda's first independent rear suspension setup. The front is conventional double wishbones at the front, which give extremely good handling characteristics at the front, and as you would expect, that is kind of typical what you would expect from double wishbone. Quite not pitchy and bouncy. It's not McPherson strut is a bit more pitchy and bouncy, as I've experienced in the Rover R8, but in a 600 it's a bit more undulated and smoother, exactly like you'd expect in a 45. In this setup, it's extremely similar. In fact, it's almost a copy of what they would have put on an R8 45. I don't think there's many differences on here. At the front of the car with this lovely sculpted bonnet, beautiful, so modern. If you think of what this replaced, I mean, there's no comparison between a Montego and this. They're two so different cars. It's like jumping forward 20 years getting into one of these from a Maestro or Montego. Anyway, this is a beautiful front end. Got these lovely slimline headlights, which kind of found their way. I think the styling cues on these headlights, if you look at an early HHR, they certainly took inspiration from the front end, particularly with these slimline headlights and this lovely Rover grille at the front. And this lovely grille has got this lovely rubber insert at the bottom to actually seal it from the actual elements of air coming in, which they didn't need to do, but they did. It's just little things like that. And yep, glass headlights, not plastic, no plastic here. Because this is not a GSI, we haven't got fog lights at the bottom. You only got that on the GSIs, I should say. Obviously you've got some kind of familiar looking indicators, which a little bit different to the HHR indicators, but very similar indeed. And you've got this sort of black pinstripe going across, flushed handles as you would expect from any Honda Rover product of this age, and it's just sumptuous. I mean, this pillar here is absolutely sumptuous with the way it curves in and then curves back out. That is superb, and it's exactly what they actually put on the 45. You come here, it's exactly the same. Maybe not as elongated, a bit more smoother, a bit more less profound on a 45, but it's there. All the DNA is there. At the back, we've got these twin tailpipes, these chrome tailpipes, which were fitted to almost every 600 apart from the I models, the 1.8i. I believe that was the only model to not get the twin tailpipe treatment. And there was some confusing post on the forums recently where someone said that you could only get them on the TI models, and then this was wrong. after watching my YouTube video. He went on a forum and said that. No, that's kind of wrong. You know, you only didn't get these on the 1.8i models. The TI is just another model that they brought out later on, and it just happened to have them. They all have these. Ridiculous. So just to clarify that one after that initial Martin's collection video. But you just go in the back and look at this sumptuous curvy windscreen. It's very similar to what you would get on a 45 later on, so they kind of kept this kind of shape for the saloon of the 45. But you've got a lovely parcel shelf with some speakers in the back, quite generously sized speakers, and these wonderful seats, which I'm just going to bring you in here. This is just gorgeous. You get in and you just smell hide of leather. Now this is proper leather. This isn't like the PU leather style cheap leather that you get in 45s, Mark 1s and Mark 2s. Mark 1's included in that one, I'm afraid. This is sumptuous leather with proper grain to it, and being grey, I find that this is so enticing in terms of the age it was. Now look, we're thinking of a Japanese car here. Japanese were very profound for sticking a bit of wood on the door cards, you know. Yes, I know. That's just what they had to do to make it look good. But the quality of leather and the smell really stands out here. Just thick, nice, comfortable seats. And I just do the door shut. This is a sumptuous door handle opening. Brilliant, utterly brilliant. And the driver's seat, trust me, I've sat in this earlier, and it's very, very well upholstered. Nice bolsters, keep you nicely snug in. It's almost sporty in its quality, even though it's not a sporty car by any stretch of the imagination. It was never designed for that. Obviously, you've got an open sunroof as well. Just pull back the blind, and then it's very nicely controlled up there. But this is quite an early one. Not early. It still has airbags. You know, it's got a couple of airbags. Didn't get that on the really early ones. Also, we've got a few basic controls at the front here. Really clunky. Automatic transmission, 4-speed. Most of them are automatics, and quite frankly, the manual gearboxes kind of do depict that this is it's kind of the best way of travelling in one of these. I'm just going to pop the bonnet, just lift the tab up. I mean, take a look at this, right? You've got this lovely seal here. Why did they bother doing that? Because it's quality. It just stops it all rubbing against the side here. It just stops air coming in. Got a lovely twin horn setup at the front here, and we've got the 2.3. This is a really, really nice lump, this is. So this is the H series 2.3, and I don't know how much horsepower it has. And this is what I'm going to come to in a second about horsepower. I believe it has about 140, 150 from the get-go. The 2-litre versions, which would have been more common, 620s were way more common than 623s. They would have been about 131, so this would be fractionally more. But horsepower, it depends on how well it's been looked after over the years. Like MPG, quite thirsty, to be honest. They can be a bit thirsty, but it depends how you drive it and what you use it for. And if you use it on the motorway, actually, these are not thirsty whatsoever. But if you're thinking about MPG and asking what MPG does a 600 do in terms of thinking of buying one, you're in the wrong game. Don't think about buying a car this age if you're asking questions about MPG fuel economy, because it's not going to be as brilliant as what you would expect from a modern car, clearly. But over here we've got various loads of relays. It's just sort of scattered all over the place, really. You've got like an ABS motor relay hub here, got some connections here and some connections in, connections over there. It's all over the place. I think this is the thing with 90s cars. Not everything is as organised as what you'd expect expect it to be, because most manufacturers are adding a lot of electronics to their cars, and Japanese cars are no exception to that. And they were kind of wondering, where do we put all this stuff? And they kind of had worked out that we could kind of organise the electrics in one junction area and then have all the looms going around the place instead of having connectors in left, right and centre places. But we have the 4-speed Honda Matic down there that I've driven a couple of times recently in a couple of Rover R8s, and it's a wonderful little gearbox this, so I understand how this should feel, but not with this engine. This is the 2.3 twin cam H series, and you only get the 2.3 is a twin cam from the get-go. It's only the single cam if it's the 1.8 or the 2 litre. The 1.8 was more of a tax break sort of thing. It was a later addition. But I'm just looking at the size of the components. The distributor is huge. The swing arm mount for the engine, the rocking, I call it the rocking mount. It's an absolute monster. It's like a radius arm for a rear suspension. It is huge. It's a massive dog bone. And the subframe is nice and thick. It's almost akin to what I'd expect on a Rover 75. Heavily engineered. Everything is huge. The plug for the alternator is huge. Everything is gigantic. Power steering pump, quite big. Alternator, quite big. All these belts have been changed. We've got 2 different belts going on. When cars didn't have serpentine belts, it was couple of different belts, one for the power steering, one for the alternator, etc. We've got the accumulator, the gas accumulator ABS reservoir down here, that they can lose their gas. It's something to be very aware about with earlier pre-96 Rover 600s. They all have this Honda derived ABS gas ABS system, and unfortunately the gas accumulators can run out of gas over the years, and you can't get new ones, you can't get second-hand ones barely anymore. It is a bit of a problem. It's almost a case of, if you've got an early 600 with an ABS system that's putting a light on the dashboard because you've got no gas, I think deleting the ABS is probably going to be your way forward to get past the MOTs. Just something to be aware of there in 2024. It is a big problem today. Later models have the Bosch ABS unit that would have been fitted to a 45. No problems with them whatsoever, really. They never really go wrong. So just something to be aware of. So that's why early 600s, you may not see a lot of them because of that alone. Huge whacking heat shield down there. That's absolutely huge. It's covering a massive manifold there. And we got the PGMFI, program fuel injection. Yes, these never go wrong. Got vacuum lines sending important information to the ECU down there. And we got a few little motors in there, but mainly vacuum orientated, no electronics, very few electronics. And you might think that this stuff would cause a problem. To be honest, I wouldn't like to own a 600 with a running problem, because if you had a pinhole leak in any one of these, that's going to take some diagnosing. But they never seem to go wrong. They just don't go wrong, really. So you've got nothing to worry about. It looks like there's 2 massive solenoids down here for the automatic transmission. Just I'm noticing little things. And also what's quite ancient about the engine bay is the expansion system to the radiator. So you actually fill the radiator, you don't fill the expansion bottle, which is very small, and it just looks ancient. It's definitely like one of these like non-pressurized systems down here. This is the pressurized bit in the tank. This is non-pressurized, whereas that cap is usually on the expansion tank, and that's pressurized, but this is just a low pressure overflow. So it's quite interesting, but the capacity is quite big, and this radiator has been recently changed by Martin. This car has been looked after really nicely. Martin bought this car in 2008 for the prince's sum of, how much was it? £375. That is ridiculous. And they're still really cheap today, aren't they? You just get what you could get one for. Probably £1,000, maybe less than £1,000. Yeah, I'd say so. Ones with paintwork issues, as you've probably noticed, we've got some paintwork, touch-up rattle can jobs going on. We've got some previous welding was done to the bottom here, but it unfortunately distorted the panel a little bit, so Martin's had to smooth it out. You do get the old tin worm. This is a bit of a problem with Ford 600s, I should say. We get the odd tin worm at the bottom. This is a commonplace for them to start bubbling, but that's actually not bad. Rear arches do tend to corrode. Unfortunately, 600s do tend to rust, which is the second reason why you don't see many of these left. Yeah, so a couple of things to sort of regard. But anyway, let's... I want to get on the road. I want to drive this thing, and we'll see what this is like. This is going to be quite interesting. Right, here we go. Put the key in. We haven't got a wobbly key, but it's still an old-fashioned key.
It's very old school.
It's
very old school.
It's from the days of Maestros and Montegos.
I wonder if we'll get the ABS light to come on now.
Right, ABS light.
So it's illuminating obviously now. So
yeah.
Oh yeah, it's still on. Yeah, that's because you're stuck with that now for the journey.
Right. It's gone off. Hey, the ABS light has gone off.
Happy days.
There we go. Seems to be a thing with these.
Because it's warm today-ish.
So the temperature affects
the pressure
of the gas.
Yeah, just that little bit. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Ooh. See, something else to look.
Because I've been working with this for so long now that I'm beginning to understand what's going on.
I see.
So if it was -2 today, or even 3 degrees, it would be on.
You were telling me about the MOT procedure, which was to get the car,
drop the car off,
yeah,
and say to the tester, please don't start your test for at least 20 minutes.
Yes.
Because then when he starts the car, the light will be off, because it will have forgotten the code. And if he keeps the engine running,
I see,
then the light won't come on. Like I drove from Somerset to Birmingham yesterday.
Yeah.
When I stopped briefly to send somebody a message from a services, I didn't shut down the engine.
Yeah.
And the light didn't come on the whole time, the whole day. Yeah. So, you know, it's not dead yet.
No, it's a fireball.
Yeah.
It's you know, it's there.
Yeah.
It is the elephant in the room, though. Unfortunately.
It is.
It's a shame.
It is a shame, because otherwise I wouldn't be thinking about, you know, moving this car on in the next 18 months or whatever.
No.
But because it could soldier on like that for quite a long time, who knows?
I think so.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I've had it like that for over 12 months.
Fingers crossed on that one. It seems really comfortable in it straight away, because I want to give you guys on the camera a real good insight into how, because I've never sat in one, I've never driven one. So straight away the seating position is lower than a 45, so it's a little bit more sporty in that respect. My legs are a bit more straight rather than sort of bent a little bit, because the seat is, I think, fractionally lower, but not much more.
There's more leg room than a 45.
There's definitely more leg room. I mean, this console is quite big, but it doesn't intrude in any way. I've got a familiar looking handbrake, similar here. It's all rather familiar, actually. We've got electric windows, so I'll just put a couple of windows down. Yes,
and they all work on this one.
Do they?
Oh yeah, none of them off the runners or anything like that.
All 4 electric windows work. Goodness me. Right, okay, let's bump into D4. D4 on the selector, and straight away just smooth.
Smooth engine, but same can't be said of the suspension. You'll see that.
Oh really?
You'll feel that.
This will be interesting.
When you go over bumps, it'll crunch. That's quite standard for a 600.
Ticking of an actual relay. Off we go. Second. Third. Oh, it kicks into gear. This one kicks.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Some of them don't. Some of the Honda-matics are quite smooth.
Yeah. All the 600s I've had have been fairly noticeable changes, but they never go wrong though.
No. Oh goodness me, it pulls with absolute ease.
Oh, it's got ample performance.
You've got too much. I said this about the 1.8K series, even with the CVT. It feels like I've got too much performance, and you're at risk of trying to use more of what you've got and risk breaking some speed limits.
Yeah.
Makes you think why people actually bother modifying these.
Oh, exactly. I mean, one of the nice things about running a 600 is that they can keep up with absolutely virtually everything. You know, there's no real compromise with that. Fourth at 40 miles an hour. That was very nice progress. Gearbox was whirring a bit in first, quite nice charismatic sound there, quite old school. The amount of visibility is ridiculous. I mean, it's like being in a glass house. Just look through these door mirrors and all I can see is the hunch of that rear quarter panel. So nice to see. So you're saying they changed the steering rack? Yeah, to improve the turning circle.
Oh, so this doesn't have that improved steering rack?
Yeah, it doesn't have it. Yeah.
So early ones get this rather long lock to lock.
Yeah.
Ooh. I mean, I don't feel that it's massively long when it comes to the turning circle, but
if you're having to do a 3-point turn, you know, in a road, it's quite noticeable.
That's interesting. It does feel like a ship. You know, it feels like you're steering a boat rather than a dynamic car. It's not dynamic at all, and I didn't expect it to be. And I wonder how this compares to a Rover 800. That's something I've got to do at some point. An 800 review, because this effectively went in between the 400 and the 800, but this kind of had to be the replacement for the 800 went on, and both this and the 800 were replaced by the 75. But I actually think, I wonder, because of how modern this is, I think the 800 must have looked a little bit more archaic when this came out, and I feel that the customers that would have naturally looked at an 800 when this came out, they might have just made a complete redecision on that one. Thought, no, actually, I could buy something less expensive, smaller, but have something that's more modern.
You might detect a slight judder on the brakes if you brake harshly. There is just a tad.
I was going to say there is some brake judder going on here.
Yeah. You sort of have to
feather it
a bit, because I can't be bothered to get those bloody discs off from behind the hubs. That's one of the ownership issues.
If you listen to this, guys, the discs are not accessible, really. You need to take the hub off to change the discs. That is a bit of a service problem.
Yeah.
Because at this age, you know, any car over 20 years of age, I would say, don't neglect your brake discs. And just, if you're going to change your pads, I often change the discs as well, because, well, it kind of makes things easy in the long run. But on this, it's not a simple case of unbolting it, or it comes off with a grub screw. It's actually behind. That's quite old school, that is. So that's where, for me, this is where you've still got elements of the old Honda, the old school engineering, which was a little bit more hands-on when it came to replacing things, and not necessarily that serviceable, but meets some extremely nice fuel injection technology. Goodness me, got this on camera. XJS convertible.
Yeah.
Now that is talk about the old versus the new. This is a mix. That's ancient. That's probably, I'd say, probably a couple, maybe the same age as this car, and yet that would be quite an ancient drive, put it that way. Well, there's no point doing a drive in a 600 around town if you're not going to get up to this sort of speed. This is where the 600 is completely at home, and I feel completely at ease. I think this is actually, give credit to the 45. I think the 45 is equally as refined with the 1.8, but it has to be a 1.8.
Yeah.
But the 600, I mean, you've got plenty of power from this 2.3. And the suspension copes really nice at this speed. And there is a little feature on the automatics. The engine mounting for the automatics, I mean on the gearbox side, is an electronically controlled hydraulic mount with a gate. So at a certain speed, the hydraulic fluid is allowed to pass from one side to the other, therefore firming the engine mounting up at higher speeds, which increases the refinement. How interesting is that? You only got it on the automatics. Well, I'm going to leave this here, guys, with this rather nice Rover 600 drive, and I've thoroughly enjoyed this experience, and we've got to get back yet. I'm going to leave this here with a few odd camera shots in there as we go along the road. But thank you so much for joining, and I hope that this has been quite useful for people that are wanting a 600 or looking for a 600. It is a fantastic car, especially at higher speeds, and a real quality car that Rover produced with Honda. And despite the fact that he's predominantly a Honda underneath, there's enough elements of Rover in it to make me think, yeah, I really like this car, and I could see this being a car in my life at some point in the future. And for being such a cheap and obtainable car, I mean, what's there not to like? Take care, guys. As someone who's owned a P6, this is normal.
Well, I think in many ways this is like a spiritual successor to the P6. I really do. It should have been called a Rover 2000 in a way.
Yes,
right at this moment.
absolutely.
It feels like kind of a P6 ambience, don't you think?
Yeah.
But in a more modern
Agreed.
way.
The SG1 did not follow over from the P6 characteristics.
No.
Too sporty.
Yeah.
I think they're too raw. Even in a poverty spec 2000 model, they look just too.
I think even the shape of this is a bit like P6. It's dark, the way it tapers off at the front.
I agree. I agree.
You automatically feel, yeah, this kind of is a Rover, even though it's a Honda.
They did a good job.
Yeah.
I don't think they could have gone to bed with a better partner.
Yeah.
Disappeared. That's absolutely crazy. That's the first time that's happened. I'm gonna have to text him and say it failed.
Yeah.
It failed.
That's the cheap one, yeah.
That was the cheap one.
Yeah.
Oh God. How did that fall off? I didn't even hear it.
No, I didn't hear a thing.
Tempted to go back and look for it, but I can't remember the road we came down.
Well, I think you just wouldn't see it, to be honest.
No.
I've lost wheel trims off cars before now and gone looking, and you just don't find them, do you? Because they're just not there.
Right, we've just pulled up at the petrol station again that we left a few minutes ago after attaching some cameras. And I'm just going to retrieve one. We dropped it ages ago. We drove 6 minutes down the road and I looked over the door. Oh, it's gone. Look, it wasn't my GoPro, it was the cheap one. Oh, goodness me. So, some idiots run over this. Like, it's only been here maybe maximum of 10 minutes possibly. I got a dead camera. This is I tell you what, YouTubers, don't buy cheap GoPro cameras. They don't last. They really don't last. I don't think I can get this to work as well. No, it's dead. Completely dead. I just wanted the mounting. That's a cool mounting. So, goodness me. Welcome to the world of YouTubing. Trash.
Maybe that's why they call it furious driving.